Hare Krishna, is everybody able to see the screen? Chapter 18?
Yes,
Yes.
Mataji.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna. Okay. We'll try to complete maximum. If not, if we are not able to complete today, please don't worry. We'll try to complete it tomorrow. Okay. Right, we'll see. Like within 1.5 hours, how much ever we can complete, we'll try to complete. And if not, we'll take it from tomorrow. Right. So 18.1. Arjuna Uvacha. And before we start the class, please let us take the blessings of the beautiful deities of Sri Sri Radha Govind Ji. Sri Sri Radha Govind Ji ki Jai. Okay. So 18.1. Arjuna. See, 18th chapter is nothing but the summary of all the chapters. Okay. Whatever we have read, it is just the summary. Okay. So that's why it has more number of slokas and the conclusion. Right. It's the summary and the conclusion. Arjuna Uvacha Sanyasasya Mahabaho Tattvam Ichchami Veditum Tyagasya cha Hrishikesha Pratak Keshi Nishudanam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Arjuna said, O mighty armed one, I wish to understand the purpose of renunciation, tyaga, and of the renounced order of life, O killer of the Kesi demon, master of the senses. So here in the first shloka, Arjuna is asking a question, because we are saying this is the summary and conclusion, right? We already know Arjuna asks about this question, right? So Arjuna is asking Krishna a very clear question. Please explain the real meaning of renunciation, tyaga, and sannyasa. Sannyasi means what? Giving up worldly life. Okay, so chapter 18 is the final summary of everything. So the main message of Bhagavad Gita is what? The goal of life is devotional service to Krishna, or practicing Krishna consciousness. So here, okay, Krishna says in the next sloka. So here Arjuna is asking about, tell me about, explain me about renunciation, tyaga, and the renounced daughter of life, sannyasa. So let's see what Krishna gives the reply. Sri Bhagavan Uvacha ka, Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sanyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarvakarma Falatyagam Prahustyagam Vicha, Vichakshanaha. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. The Supreme Lord said, to give up the results of all activities is called renunciation, tyaga, by the wise, and that state is called the renounced order of life, sannyasa, by great learned men. Okay, so here, see, renunciation, Krishna is trying to say that renunciation does not mean running away from life. It's not like giving up all your duties and responsibilities and running into the forest. Say, okay, running away from your responsibilities. That is not the meaning of renunciation or tyaga. It means doing your duties without selfish desire and offering the results to Krishna. So you've given your 100% to your duties without expecting any results, right? You offer that results to Krishna. So that is tyaga. And what is sannyasa? Krishna is saying sannyasa means renounced order of life. Krishna is saying sannyasa does not just mean wearing orange robes or some special clothing and just leaving the society. So, what is true renunciation? Krishna is telling giving up ego, selfishness, and attachment, right? Everything that we do should be connected to Krishna. So, yesterday we discussed, right? That is what Om Tat Sat means, right? Whatever work we are doing, we do it as an offering to Krishna. Okay, so that's what Krishna is saying. 18.3. Some learned men declare that all kinds of fruitive activities should be given up, but there are yet other sages who maintain that acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be abandoned. Okay, here some people, wise people, say that actions for personal gain, means your personal sense gratification, should be stopped, while others say sacrifice, charity, and penance should never be given up. So some are saying that these things should be given up. Some are saying they should never be given up. Right? So because there were different opinions, Krishna himself now he will explain what is the correct understanding in the next shloka. Okay, because some are saying sacrifices and all must be done, some are saying no, not required. So Krishna will give a clarity now. What is whether you have to do or not do. Okay, yagna dana tapah karma na tyajyam karyam evatat yagno danam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam. So, what is Krishna saying? Acts of sacrifice, charity, and penance are not to be given up, but should be performed. Indeed, sacrifice, charity, and penance purify even the great souls. So, what is Krishna saying? Sacrifice, charity, and penance should not be given up. They're very important because they purify the heart, right? And even great people, people who renounce also should do it, right? These actions, why do we do all these things? They are meant to help society and support spiritual growth. See, for example, you take marriage. See, marriage is also a kind of sacrifice that helps people to live peacefully and grow spiritually, right? If there's no marriage, imagine like how can people like nowadays they say, right, how awkward, they say live in relationship or something they say, right? So that's why these sacrifices are necessary for us, right? So that we can live peacefully and we can grow spiritually. So whether someone is a student or even a family person or even a renounced person, good actions done for spiritual purpose should continue. It should not be stopped, right? So all these actions, sacrifice, charity, penance, be whoever be it a family person or a student or even a renounced person, they should be continued. It should not be stopped, right? That's what Krishna is saying. You see in the PPT here, right? Here, Daksha, he is continuing his yagna. Initially, I think all of you know the story. Daksha, he actually organizes a great yagna, wherein all the demigods from all directions come, and everybody comes. But he doesn't invite, he invites everybody, but because of some reason, he tries to, when he enters the yagna, Lord Shiva is his son in law, right? So he doesn't get up. Brahma also doesn't get up. Okay, Brahma is Daksha's father, so okay, he doesn't mind even if Brahma doesn't get up. But Lord Shiva is his son-in-law. He doesn't get up. He gets very disturbed. How come my son-in-law is not? He does not. He's not thinking that Lord Shiva is way beyond all that. He's quite transcendental, right? He's still Daksha is thinking that he's my son-in-law. He should give me respect and all that, right? And then what happens is because he Lord Shiva doesn't get up, he insults Lord Shiva with the harsh words, right? And the yagna remains incomplete. Okay, and then now Shiva, he does not take, because he's a transcendental person, he does not take anything, so he goes away. And again after many this thing, what do you say, some days again, Daksha, he invites everybody. He organizes one great yagna, and he calls everybody, but this time he does not call Lord Shiva. But Parvati, she comes to know that my father, he is organizing a great yagna. Even I want to go. But Lord Shiva says, no, 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 you should not go. You are uninvited. But she says, I'm the daughter of Daksha. I don't need any invitation. see, I'm telling you for your good, it won't be nice. He will not treat you well. Don't go. But still, Parvati, she doesn't listen to Lord Shiva and she goes there. And there, nobody takes care of Parvati over there. And she feels insulted and in the fire, she kills herself. When Lord Shiva knows this, he gets angry and then, what is that? I forgot.
Rudra Avatar. Rudra Avatar.
Not Rudra Avatar Prabhuji, that one. Lord Shiva's one, what kind of assistant, his name I forgot, Prabhuji. He comes and he cuts off the head of Daksha. He becomes so angry and he cuts and kills everybody over there who is supporting the yagna. Right? Without Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, what is this yagna that is going on here? And he gets angry and he cuts off the head of Daksha. And then finally, because Daksha realizes, Vishnu comes and he realizes what I have done is wrong. I thought he was my son-in-law, but Shiva is transcendental and all that he realizes. And then Vishnu comes and he gives him the head of a goat because his head was cut off, right? Now he had to complete the yagna. That yagna is still incomplete, right? Because he had to complete that yagna. Now that head is goat of a head will be given to him, and he puts that, and then he invites Lord Shiva and Vishnu, and then he completes the yagna. So here they are showing that the completion of the yagna is so important. So such even Daksha, who is such a great, he's a Prajapati, right? So even he had to complete the yagna. So yagna is so important, sacrifices. So that's why all these sacrifice, charity, penance are very important. Okay.
Mataji,
Yes, Prabhuji.
Mataji, in true renunciation, which we discussed,
Uh,
what what other two topics were there? The first was giving up ego, and which were the other two?
Attachment, no, Mataji. Ego attachment, you were saying, if I'm not wrong.
Second. I don't remember exactly, Prabhuji.
Uh, one was giving up ego, second was giving up attachment, and third was giving up desires.
Generic statement, Prabhuji. I mean, like renunciation means basically means you whatever duty you do, Prabhuji, you do it out of you give your 100% to that thing, whatever you're doing. Okay, without expecting anything. For instance, see, you study for the exam, like you're studying for an exam. You don't worry about whether you pass or fail. You just try to give in your 100%. You study whatever is there, and you give in your 100%, and you write the exam, right? So you don't worry, you leave the result to Krishna, right? And you don't write with the expectation or study with the expectation that I have to get 80%, 90%. No, you just do your duty, study thoroughly, completely, right? That is main tyaga. Renunciation means you don't do anything for your with expectation. You leave everything to Krishna. Okay, so that is the main thing. Tyaga or renunciation means that. And sannyasa means basically you leave the whole, I mean, like you leave your family members, the worldly attachment, everything you leave, and you enter a sannyas life so that you can spread spirituality. So your whole life is for propagation of Krishna consciousness, like that. Generally, who does tyaga means, Prabhuji? It's the house grihasthas, like grihasthas or working people. They do tyaga, right? So these are the correct people who do tyaga. Okay, because they can give up because they can't give up their work or their grihastha responsibilities and duties. So doing that, but include Krishna to your material life. Just add Krishna to your life. Just give you whatever work you're doing, you offer it to Krishna. That's all you have to do. That's the thing, Prabhuji. Because when I'm telling something, I don't remember the points because it just comes out like that, right? So I don't exactly remember what I say. So that's the reason. But this is the, I mean, exact meaning of renunciation and sannyas, Prabhuji. Okay, so let's go to 18.6. Etani apitu karmani sangam tyaktva falani cha kartavyani me partha nishchitam matam uttamam. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. All these activities should be performed without any expectation of result. Okay, they should be performed as a matter of duty. O son of Pritha, that is my final opinion. See, when you do, we should do good actions like sacrifice, charity, and penance as our duty. Like how a father, maintaining a family is his duty. He does not expect any reward. Oh, I'm taking care of you, I'm paying your fees, give me a reward or something. He doesn't expect anything, right? So like that, we should do any sacrifice or charity or penance as a duty without wanting any rewards from it, without expecting anything in return. Okay, so anything that helps us become Krishna conscious should be done, and anything done for material gain should be avoided. So anything that we do for our sense gratification, it binds us to this world, because there is either good or bad karma. But anything that you do for Krishna, it is not binding us. It frees us, it liberates us from this material world. Like in the picture PPT, you see this picture, right? He's trying to save a sheep which has fallen in the water, right? That is so nice, right? He's not considering he it's like he's doing it as a duty. Otherwise there's no necessity. He could have left it. Oh, what for me? Nothing, and I will not get anything. But still he's saving that sheep which has fallen in the water. But both of them are saving without any expectation. They're just saving that poor animal which has fallen in the water. Okay, just as a matter of duty, they're doing it without any expectation. Okay, like that. Okay, so 18.7. So here they're talking about prescribed duties. So prescribed duties in the mode of goodness, in the mode of passion, and in the mode of ignorance. So let's see how prescribed duties are. Okay. So let's see. In shloka number 7, they're saying you should never give up your proper duties just because. First, they're talking about in ignorance, 18.7. Okay, prescribed duties in the mode of ignorance. So you should never give up your proper duties just because you're confused or lazy. So in the mode of ignorance, what you generally do, you don't do your duties because you're confused or lazy. Okay, if someone stops doing the responsibilities thinking, oh, I have renounced everything. These people, the renouncers or tyagis, they say, I have given up everything. That's why I don't have any responsibility, right? That kind of renunciation is ignorance. Means they are neglecting. They don't want to do their duties and responsibilities. They're trying to escape from them with the intention that, oh, I'm practicing spirituality, that's why I don't want to do any role with my duties and responsibilities, and they escape and go into the forest. So that should not be the thing. That kind of renunciation is renunciation in ignorance. So giving up selfish work for personal pleasure is good. Okay, but spiritual activities, right, like cooking for God or offering food to him, helping others grow spiritually, those should never be given up. Okay, even by a renounced person, right? If someone gives up such spiritual duties, that renunciation is darkness. Okay, so this has to be done. In ignorance means generally what people think is like, please try to understand. Generally, what does a renounced person do? He leaves everything and he goes into the forest, leaves all his duties and responsibilities. But here, Krishna is saying that is not correct. That is an ignorance. But what is the true thing? You stay where you are, you do your duties, right? You do your duties without any expectation. Give your results to Krishna. So what are the activities that you can do from where you are? Like you can cook for God. These are the spiritual activities. Means you're offering it to Krishna. So that you should do, like cooking for God, offering food to Him, help others grow spiritually. So these should not be given up. These should be surely done, because any activity is done for Krishna, to please Krishna, right? So that is the thing. This is in the mode of ignorance. So people who think that who leave the responsibilities and go to the forest, they are in the mode of ignorance. But what actually you should do is, you should do your duties, not escaping, leaving your responsibilities and duties and going to the forest, running to the forest. No, stay where you are, do your duties to your 100%, and do it as an offering, do it as an offering to Krishna. I mean, you give the results to Krishna. Okay. Now, 8 is prescribed duties in the mode of passion. Let's see what Krishna says. See, if someone gives up their duties because they feel it's too hard, right? Whatever the activity they have to do is too hard, or it is too uncomfortable, or they are afraid of effort, means they have to put too much effort. They are scared. Oh, I don't want to do this. Is so difficult. Okay, so that is renunciation and passion. So they find the work either too hard or too uncomfortable, or they're afraid to put too much effort. Okay, so real spiritual life doesn't mean escaping work. So you should not escape work. That's what, you should not leave work or leave your responsibility or duty, right? If work or discipline helps us serve God or grow spiritually, we should not quit it just because it is tiring. That should not be the reason, right, to escape duty. So running away from duty is no real spiritual growth. Okay, but people in the passion, in the mode of passion, they try to escape work because maybe it's too hard or difficult, or they fear, they have to put a lot of effort. Okay, so these are the people in the they try to do prescribed duties in the mode of passion. Okay, so next let's see 9. What is 9? Prescribed duties in the mode of goodness. So this is how we should do our prescribed duties. See, when a person does their duty just because it is the right thing to do, without expecting any reward and without any attachment. Okay, just do your duty, give your full effort 100%, and without any attachment, and leave the result to Krishna. So that is renunciation in the mode of goodness. See, you work, but you don't say, I must get the full result of what I have put, the effort that I've put, I should get everything. No, you don't say that, you don't expect anything for yourself, right? So you offer the result to God and you stay peaceful. Okay, so this is the best kind of renunciation. Okay, so we should try to do our prescribed duties in the mode of goodness. So 13, 14. O mighty armed Arjuna, learn from me of the 5 factors which bring about the accomplishment of all action. These are declared in Sankhya philosophy to be the place of action, the performer, the senses, the endeavor, and ultimately the super soul. Okay, so Krishna explains here that every action happens because of 5 causes, not just one person alone. See, generally, what do we think? When we do any work, we think, I am the only doer. It is happening because of me alone. But here, Krishna is telling Arjuna, you are not the only one reason. There are not, besides you, there are 5 other causes. Okay, what are the 5 causes Krishna is saying? One is the body, right? The body where the action happens. Next, the soul, the one who wants to act. That is the soul. The senses, the hands, legs, eyes, mind, all those things. And next, fourth one is the effort, the energy and the attempt you put in. And final and the most important is super soul, because without his sanction, nothing can happen. Okay, so you should understand one thing, that you are not acting alone. When you're doing any action, you're not the only one who is responsible. There are 5 causes in total. Krishna is trying to say.
Mataji, Mataji,
Yes,
which was the fifth cause?
fifth is super soul, Prabhuji. That is the Lord himself. Because
And
nothing happens. Yeah.
Mataji, in the from the body, the action happens, and in the
Yes.
soul, action, we can say
The
action is
soul is,
born.
action is what, sorry?
Action is born.
No, I didn't understand. Action is what, Prabhuji? No, see,
Uh,
the soul acts through the body, Prabhuji, because it's like a machine. See, when you're there's a driver and the car is like a machine, and the driver is driving the car. So if we want to do anything, the soul has to do it through the body, right? The soul can't
yes.
do anything by itself, right? It's just consciousness. So through the body, it has to do any action, right? So the body is the place where everything happens, and the one who makes it happen is the soul, okay? Through the body and the senses, okay?
And Mataji, these 5 other uh, oth- other gates from where action happens.
No, these 5 are not, I mean, like whatever activity we do, these 5 are the causes, Prabhuji. One is the soul, the body, the senses, and the effort that you put, and the super soul. So these 5 are necessary, right? But generally, what do we think? We are the only one that is responsible. I am doing it, you think. But no, you are just one of the 5 causes. So actually, it is the soul, the body, the senses, effort, and the super soul, that all these 5 comprise any action that we do. Okay, so all these are required. Okay. So next is 16. Therefore, one who thinks himself the only doer, not considering the 5 factors, is certainly not very intelligent and cannot see things as they are. So that's what they're telling. Generally, what people think are that I am the doer, and everything. If I work hard, it will happen. Many people think that they depend on their hard work. They say if I do hard work, there is nothing in this world that is not stoppable, right? But they don't understand that that is one of the cause. His the action that he is doing, that is only one thing, but there are 5 other causes that help him do that. Unless all those are there, can what he thinks will not happen. Okay, that who understands this is very intelligent. That's what Krishna is telling here. Okay, 18. Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower are the 3 factors which motivate action, the senses, the work, and the doer. Compromise the threefold basis of action. Okay, so before any action is performed, 3 things are there. 3 things. One is knowledge. Knowledge means what? Understanding, like how to do it. The first 3 they said, right? Knowledge, the object of knowledge, and the knower. So knowledge means what? The understanding how to do it, and object of knowledge means what is to be done, and the knower is the person, right? So when action happens, 3 things perform it: the senses, the work itself, and the doer. Doer is the soul here. He does the work through the body and senses, right? So here you can see, right? Motivate, they're saying action. How? The senses. So they're pointing the arrow to the senses, if you see in the PPT, right? Right. And the work means what? He's trying to hit the ball. That is the work. That is the object of knowledge. And the doer. Who is the doer? The person over there. Right. So these 3 are needed. Right. These 3 are the main thing, are the main basis of action. Okay. Next, in 19, they are talking about 3 kinds of knowledge based on the modes of material, knowledge. Sorry, material nature. Okay, so knowledge in the mode of goodness, knowledge in the mode of passion, knowledge in the mode of ignorance. So let's see that. So 18.20, so they're saying, so first in the mode of goodness, let's see what is knowledge in the mode of goodness, right? Seeing one same spirit soul present in all living beings. So here, what is the knowledge? Generally, what people think is in the material world, they think they are just this body. I mean, if they don't have spiritual knowledge, they think they are this body, and after this body is finished, nothing is there, right? But here, people in the mode of goodness, they have the correct knowledge. They know that there is only one spirit soul, but that one spirit soul is there in having different bodies. That is true knowledge. The same spirit soul, which is eternal, but it is having, it is there in different bodies. So that is the correct knowledge. See, the same, seeing one same spirit. See, I am spirit, you are spirit. So that same spirit is there. But you have a different body, I have a different body, someone else has a different body. But the spirit is the same thing. That we have to understand. The spirit is eternal, it is the same thing. It is the same which is present in you and me. But only difference is it is taking different bodies. So those who know this are people in having the knowledge in the mode of goodness. Okay. So this is in the good mode of goodness. And next, 21. They are saying knowledge in the mode of passion. What is that? See, knowledge in the mode of passion means thinking, they think that each body has a different soul. Okay. Or sometimes they believe the body itself is the soul. Okay. So such people, as we discussed, right, they think that the consciousness, that body itself is the consciousness. See, when the body is not responding, they think that's the end. The body is over and everything is over. So they deny the existence of a permanent individual soul. They don't understand that concept of soul itself. They just think that they are this body, and everything, once the body is over, everything is over. Okay, so this is the knowledge that the people in the mode of passion have. Okay, so next 22. This is knowledge in the mode of darkness. So, darkness means ignorance, means they think that life is about only one thing. They usually think about only the body or any single activity. What is the single activity means? Their life either is, for example, earning money is everything for them, or eating, sleeping, enjoying. That's all life is about. Or my job or daily routine is the only purpose of life. So these people, they maintain that single activity, like a particular activity that is their goal. That's all. Either earning money is everything, or their job is their job, their career goal. That is the everything for them. Or for some, it is like eating, sleeping, or enjoying. That is life for them, like that. So such people, they care only about money, comfort, eating, sleeping, and survival, and they ignore the soul, God, and scriptures. So those people are said to be in the in ignorance, in the mode of ignorance. Okay, their knowledge is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Okay, such people. Next, we'll see about three kinds of actions. Actions in the mode of goodness. How are the actions in the mode of goodness? How the actions are in the mode of passion, and actions in the mode of ignorance. We'll see how it is. Okay, and action in the mode of goodness is when you follow proper rules, like when you follow the scriptures, right? And it's done without attachment, not for our personal sense gratification, but to please Krishna. And there is no love or hatred toward that work. Whatever work you're doing, it's like you do it out of duty. It's not because you love it, you love to do that work, or you hate that work. Nothing like that. You do it just as a duty. So there is no love or hatred towards the work or the people there. and it's performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, not for not for your sense gratification. Okay. Okay, the example I can give you is helping someone because it's the right thing to do. Like we saw that sheep, right? How they were helping, right? Not because they wanted some praise or reward, just because they wanted to save it, they saved it, just as a matter of duty. So that is the thing. Now, next, 23. So, action in the mode of passion. Here, how the actions, a person who's in the mode of passion, how their actions are, you can recognize because they work very hard, right? They work hard like donkeys. They work, but and why do they work? Only to satisfy for their personal sense gratification, only to satisfy their personal desires. Okay, they act out of pride or ego, thinking that I am doing this, right? They think if I don't do, nothing will happen. I am doing this. They have that ego. Okay, they are not in that mode that I'm serving, right? They are in that ego that I am doing everything. So they whatever work they are doing, they're attached to the results. Okay, it's not like they're giving their results to Krishna. They want the results. I'm giving my 100%. I want the whole thing for myself. I want the results. Like I perform that yagna, I want the result of that yagna. I don't give it to Krishna. I want it for myself. So you care more about what you get, right? You want that result for yourself. Okay, so that is in the mode of passion. Now, action in the mode of ignorance. Now, 24. You act carelessly or ignorantly. Your actions, how are they? You act carelessly or ignorantly without following the rules of scriptures. See, basically, anything that is in the mode of ignorance is quite opposite to the mode of goodness. Blindly, you can think that way. They just go quite opposite to the mode of goodness. Right? In the mode of goodness, they follow the scriptures and do everything properly. Here, they don't follow the scriptures and everything they do, just the opposite of mode of goodness. They don't follow the rules, they don't follow the scriptures. Okay, and they don't they try to harm others, and they're not bothered about the future consequences of their actions, and they act out of illusion. They're always in maya, that brahma. They are thinking what they make their own assumptions. They, because they don't follow the scriptures, right? They think whatever they are thinking, that is correct. They what do you say, whatever they think they're intelligent, and whatever they're doing is the correct thing, right? But they don't know they're gliding to down to hell, because they're doing all wrong actions, in fact. Okay, so example is like you can say cheating in an exam, lying, or harming someone just to get what you want. And they do things without knowing what is right or wrong. Okay, so like that, these people in the uh, such are the actions of people in the mode of ignorance. Okay, and next we'll see 26, 27, 28, three kinds of workers. So how is a worker in the mode of goodness, worker in the mode of passion, and worker in the mode of ignorance? Okay, so worker in the mode 26. Okay, 26, a worker in the mode of goodness, they do their duty without being influenced by greed, anger, or laziness, and they don't act out of ego or pride. Okay, and they are determined and enthusiastic about their work until it's finished. Okay, they remain calm whether the outcome is success or a failure. Okay, it's like an example, like a student studies sincerely for knowledge, not for marks, and he stays focused even if the results are not perfect. Like he just studies for the sake of studying to get knowledge, not for marks, and he's not bothered even if he gets less marks. His main intention is to get that knowledge. Okay, so like that.
Mataji, which was the first one in worker who is in the mode of goodness?
Yeah,
Uh, how does that worker works?
that's what Prabhuji I'm telling here. See, they do their duty without any greed, anger, or laziness. They don't have any ego or pride. Okay, and they're very enthusiastic and very determined about their work until it's finished. They have they're very, I mean, they treat work, they don't love or hate work, right? For them it is like a duty. They do their work, so they do their work with determination and enthusiasm till the end, until it's finished, and they remain calm. That's what, they're not bothered about the outcome, whether it is success or failure. They remain calm. Okay, so these are the workers who are in the mode of goodness. They are like that. See, that's the example I was trying to give. See, like a student, he studies, like he wants to get the knowledge of that subject, but he's not worried about the marks. Even if the outcome is like he does not get good marks, he's not bothered, because what is his main duty? He wants to get that knowledge. Okay, so that's what he's more interested in. As a duty, he studies, okay, to get knowledge. Okay, he's not bothered about the outcome. Okay, like that. So next, 27, a worker in the mode of passion. Okay, so these people, they're attached to their work and they care only about the results. Okay, they want, they do it for their sense gratification. They are greedy, envious, and they're selfish, thinking what they get is permanent. So they think that whatever they get, the result is permanent. Like, for example, if they earn money, they think that money will be there with them forever, permanently. They keep on earning, they're never satisfied, these people. They work like donkeys, they hardly sleep, they hardly eat, they're just hoarding money. Money, that's what they want. They think that is permanent. They don't understand the concept that we have come empty handed and we will go empty handed. We can't even take a small needle with us, right? So they work like donkeys for and keep on hoarding money. And these people are like they are very greedy, envious, and selfish, right? Their happiness or sadness depends on success or failure. See, if there is success, they'll be jumping in the air. If there's failure, then they're very sad. They become gloomy, like that. So they don't care if their work is clean or proper. They do cheating and all that. Okay, they just want that personal gain, whether I've got a profit by hook or by crook, by cheating or black market or whatever be it. Thank you. So like that, their main personal interest is whether I have got that money or not, by hook or by crook, however it is, I've got it or not, right? So they're just focused on personal gain, but they're not interested whether it is got in a proper way. So they cheat and all that black market and everything they do. Okay, so for example, like see, someone works only to earn money, get praise, or to show off, and he gets upset if things don't go his way. Okay, so like that. And next, 28, a person in the mode of, the worker in the mode of ignorance. How these people are. We've earlier said, right? They're quite opposite to the workers in the mode of goodness. Quite opposite they are. See, in the mode of goodness, they follow the scriptures, right? Here, they ignore the rules of the scriptures and they do whatever they want. Here, these people are, these workers are selfish, lazy, mean, and cheat or even insult others. And they procrastinate. I mean, they're very lazy, okay? They delay things and are always gloomy or grumpy. These people, right? They don't care about doing things properly and they delay responsibilities. Okay. So it's like someone avoids their duties, he lies, treats others badly, and only thinks of themselves, right? So these are the workers in the mode of ignorance. Okay, let's go to 30, 31, 32. The three kinds of intelligences. So in understanding, okay, let's see how they'll be. 30. So understanding or intelligence in the mode of goodness, see, is when a person, he knows what is right and wrong according to the scriptures. An intelligent person who understands, who is in the mode of goodness, how does he think? How is his intelligence? Like, he knows what is right and wrong according to the scriptures, understands what is safe and what is dangerous, and what helps and what harms him, and he can make smart choices. Okay, like that. So this is the person in the mode of goodness, whose understanding is like this. Next, understanding in the mode of passion. Passion is like he gets confused about right or wrong, and he cannot tell what is proper or improper. Means meaning religion or irreligion. Okay, so what is proper or what is improper, he cannot tell, and he makes decisions based on desire or emotion rather than wisdom. Right? In an emotion, in anger or in sadness, he tries to take decision rather than taking it intellectually. Right? Like that. Next is understanding or intelligence in the mode of ignorance. Completely, this is also again opposite, completely misunderstands right and wrong. See, in mode of goodness, they can understand what is bad, what is good. Here, they completely misunderstand what is right and what is wrong. And they see bad things as good and good things as bad. Always goes in the wrong direction, ignoring truth. Okay, so these are the people, such is the intelligence in the mode of ignorance. Okay, now three kinds of determinations, right? 33, 34, and 35. So determination, the mode of goodness, is when a person is steady and strong in their goals, right? And controls their mind, body, and senses through practice and discipline. Focuses fully on something higher like learning, self improvement, or Krishna consciousness. Okay, the main thing is like these the people in the mode of goodness, they don't get distracted easily, and they keep working steadily towards what is truly important. What is the goal of life? They keep their focus on that, and they keep working. That is how they are determined, that their determination is very strong. They have a goal and they move towards that goal. Okay, next 18.34, determination in the mode of passion. So these people, they work only to get rewards like money, status, or pleasure, and they are focused on they're focused on their personal sense gratification. Okay, rather than doing what's truly right or meaningful, and they're driven by desires instead of following spirituality. Right? Okay, so the main thing is like they keep up these people, their determination keeps them tied to material things, and they are never truly peaceful. They don't go into that spiritual direction. They are so materially involved. They want money, name, fame, everything, that they are never truly peaceful. They're always hankering for more and more and more. So their determination is like they want everything for their sense gratification, and they're never satisfied. They want more, 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 because of which they're never truly peaceful. Okay, and 18.34, determination in the mode of darkness. Right, when a person doesn't have a clear goal or purpose, okay, they just go along with life without any direction. No, there's no planning, no effort to improve themselves, and their actions are mostly random. They just do it for the sake of doing. I mean, it's just like that. See, it's like being on autopilot mode, right? So they are not really living with an intention. They don't have an intention to do something in life. They don't have a goal. It's just because they have to live, they live. Okay, so they are lazy, fearful, and they complain a lot, and they're caught in illusions, and they only think about material pleasures. Okay, so this kind of determination doesn't lead them anywhere. Okay, it's like being stuck in a bad dream. Okay, you are nowhere. right? So like that. Next, now 3 kinds of happiness based on the modes of material nature. So happiness, first that in 37 they're talking about happiness in the mode of goodness. Okay, see how the happiness in the mode of goodness is. In the beginning, you feel difficult or bitter at first. It because like doing hard exercises or controlling your mind, but in the end, it brings real joy and peace, helping you understand yourself and life better. See, it's like this. Initially, see, for a person, for a boy who's studying, for him studying won't be of that much interest for him. He feels like playing at that age, right? But the mother encourages the child to study. Plus, so it's so difficult for him. Now he studies, but in the end, what is the result? He gets good marks, and then finally he gets a good degree, and then he gets a good job. So then he gets happiness, right? So happiness in the mode of goodness is first bitter in the beginning, but in the end it is sweet. Okay, like a child, like for example, let's take our spiritual example only. See, for us, we don't like chanting now, we don't like reading now, reading Prabhupada books, we don't like hearing, but we hear, but even then we hear, right? We, even though we don't like it, we don't like the chanting and everything, right? We are more interested in watching movies, going to restaurants and parties and all that, right? But still we are sitting, we are attending classes, we are coming to satsang and doing all that, which is bitter now. But as we keep on doing it, one fine day, we will get the taste of that spirituality. But chanting is like you can't stay without chanting. You will be waiting the previous day itself. Oh, when will it be morning? When will I chant? When you get that taste, you just keep hankering. See, it's like this. See, when your friend tells tomorrow we are going for a movie, you just wait from the previous day, right? When will it be morning? When will it be morning? When will I go for the movie? Like that, it will be like, when will I chant? When you get the taste for chanting, when you get a taste for reading, when will I be reading? When will I attend Mangalarti? So all these things come. So happiness in a mode of goodness is first, it will be like bitter. You will have to work hard, even though you don't like it, you have to do it. It's like that. It's like that student. He doesn't like to study, but he wants to play, right? But he studies, which is difficult for him, which is hard for him. But in the end, the result is sweet, right? He gets good results, good degree, and then a good job. So it's like that. So happiness in the mode of goodness, in the starting it is bitter, in the end it is sweet. Okay. And next, happiness in the mode of passion. It feels good at first, like pleasure from the senses, right? That sight, taste, touch, it's so nice. But in the end, it leads to pain, regret, or sorrow, like breakups or fights or disappointment. So, this kind of happiness is temporary and risky. It is sweet first, bitter later. Okay. So next, happiness in the mode of ignorance. This is like happiness, it will give you pain in the starting, and in the end also it will give you pain. Okay, so happiness in the mode of ignorance comes from they're more interested in their laziness, sleep, or being lost in illusion. So it is false and meaningless. You don't gain, what self realization or real benefit. So these people, they're not interested in spirituality, self realization. They're not interested in that real benefit. So for such people, everything seems like a pleasure at first, but it leads to distress or waste. See, unlike the mode of passion, see, we in the mode of passion we saw, right? It is sweet, and then in the end it is bitter. Here, in the mode of ignorance, it is painful in the starting and it is painful in the end. Why do you think it is painful in the start? You all must be thinking, happily they are sleeping, right? Sleeping and laziness is enjoyment, right? Why is it's painful, right? We think, we may be thinking, right? Why are they saying that people, like happiness in the mode of ignorance is painful in the beginning and painful in the end. It's so nice, na? Sleeping, being lazy, being in illusion. We may be thinking, right? So what they're saying is sleeping and laziness is enjoyment, right? Right. Even though sleep or laziness feels pleasant at the moment, the mode of ignorance is deeper than just a momentary feeling. That's why, see, if you go in depth, like not from the outside point of view, outside, if you see that sleeping is considered very enjoyable, but why it's painful from the start is it wastes your life. See, if you sleep for a more longer time, what happens? It wastes your life. See, every moment that you spend in laziness or ignorance is a moment lost for real progress. Like you want to learn something, grow, or you want to become spiritually aware. You're losing so much time, right? So that is the pain. But you may not be feeling it consciously at that point of time, right? You may feel at that time sleeping is so nice, but you're wasting so much of time. But inside you will have that, I mean, like, what do you say? That pain will be there, which you're not conscious of at present, right? And if you sleep more, what happens? It creates a dull, unsatisfied mind. See, if you sleep on a particular day for 10 to 12 hours, you don't feel refreshed. In fact, you feel dull, lazy. You don't feel like doing anything. In fact, okay, so the mind is like it remains like something like unfulfilled. You feel lost or something like that if you sleep for 10 to 12 hours. Okay, so here you deep down you have that restlessness is there. Okay, so and one more thing is it leads to problems later. So the more you give into laziness, the more responsibilities pile up because you're lazy and you're sleeping and your responsibilities keep adding up. All the things that are there that you have to do are you're not doing anything, you're just sleeping. So all your responsibilities keep piling up, and because you're being lazy and not sleeping all the time, your health also may suffer and your life's goals are also delayed. Okay, so the harm starts immediately, right? Though outside it may look like it is pleasure, but deep down inside that harm is there, that pain is there, right? Though it is not conscious now, it is like it is we can feel it deep down, right? We can understand because of that. Okay, so the happiness that these people get, you know, the mode of ignorance is like fake, it's nothing. So it feels good, like when you're sleeping it feels like it's so nice, but it doesn't satisfy the soul. Maybe it satisfies the body, but it doesn't satisfy the soul. Okay, and the real pain is already there because the soul is feeling pain. Body is happily sleeping, but the soul is feeling bad. I mean, like so much time is getting wasted. I'm not able to do anything, right? So that we have to understand. So the same thing, 18.20, they are repeating here. They are saying that that same soul is present, but the bodies are different. Okay, same thing. And 18.33 also we discussed mode of goodness, determination in the mode of goodness. Okay, here we can see Prabhupada's, right. He was so determined. You can see he never wasted any single amount of time. Morning, wherever, whatever he was doing, you know, his mind was full of Krishna. Whatever. See, morning 6 o'clock, he used to go for walking. Prabhupada. There also he used to walk, he used to go with his group of devotees, disciples, or he used to take a guest along with him, and there he used to discuss Krishna consciousness. And then at 8 o'clock, if you see, he's giving a Bhagavatam class to all the devotees. Right, again in the evening at 5 o'clock, guests are there. He's talking about Krishna conscious to people who don't know Krishna consciousness. And again, you see, right, at 1 o'clock, he's writing Shastras. He has so many books on the table and he's using a dictaphone to dictate Shastras for us. I mean, you know, Prabhupada, he hardly used to sleep for 1.5 hours, 2 hours. And from 1 to 4, he used to write the Shastras for us, right? He had so much determination. His only goal was to give Krishna to everybody. He was like, whatever, any time, He was just trying to give Krishna. That was his determination. So that is the determination in the mode of goodness. Their whole activity, life, mind, body, senses, everything is dedicated to Krishna. They don't do anything for their sense gratification. Okay, see, totally at whatever time you see, he is like totally into giving Krishna to everybody. Okay. So now let's go to 18.41, 42, 43, 44. Four kinds of ashramas. What are the four kinds of ashramas? Anybody? Brahmana. Next.
Kshatriya,
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 Vaishya,
Vaishya,
and Shudra.
Shudra.
Herbal, yes, yes, perfect. Thank you so much. So we are going to discuss about that now, okay? 18.42. Shamodamastapa Shantir Arjavam Evacha Nanam Vignanam Astikyam Brahma Karma Swabhavajam. So now here in 18.42, they are telling what are the qualities of a Brahmana, what qualities he should have. Okay, peacefulness, right? A Brahmana, he is more inclined towards knowledge and spirituality, right? So peacefulness. He has a calm mind and he's not easily disturbed. If you see a Brahmana, right, he's so bright faced, he's always calm and he does not look disturbed, right? And self control. He has control over his senses and desires. And austerity. Like he has that ability to accept discipline and simplicity, because a brahmana, even though he gets more money, he never keeps hoarding that money. He gives it to somebody because he lives simple. He leads a simple life, right? So that's why he's not interested in hoarding money. If he gets extra money, he donates it. He gives it to someone who does not have it or whatever, but he does not keep it with him. He tries to lead a simple life. Okay. And then purity, so cleanliness in body, mind and actions, obviously outside and inside. And tolerance, he has a lot of patience and even in difficult situations is very patient, right? Tolerant. Honest, honesty, being truthful and straightforward. Knowledge means understanding scriptures and life's truth. He knows the shastras and everything. Wisdom means knows how to apply knowledge properly, right? Whatever. Religiousness means living according to dharma and spiritual principles. So, in short, it means that a Brahmana is guided by purity, knowledge, discipline, and devotion, and not by power, wealth, or pleasure. Okay, so that we have to understand. So, next 18.43, we'll see what are the qualities of a Kshatriya. Shauryam, Tejo, Dhritir, Daksham, Yuddhe, Chapi, अपलायनं दानम् ईश्वरभावश्च kshatram karma swabhavajam. So what are the qualities of a kshatriya? Heroism, so bravery and readiness to face danger, right? At any moment he has to if a enemy tries to challenge him, he has to be ready to fight, right? So bravery and readiness to face danger. And power, physical and mental strength he should have. Determination, not giving up easily. And resourcefulness means the ability to solve problems and manage situations. Courage in battle, right? He should not be coward when he sees the opponent and then he runs away. So he should have that courage to fight in the battle because he should protect the others, right? Generosity, willingness to give and help. He should be generous. A king he always, like he does a lot of charity, right? He should be willing to give and help, and should be a good leader. Leadership, ability to guide and protect people. So, in short, what it means, Kshatriyas, they are meant to protect society and stand up for justice even at personal risk, right? So 18.44, let's see what they're talking about Vaishyas and Shudras. Krishi Goraksha Vanijyam Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam Paricharyatmakam Karma Shudrasyapi Swabhavajam. Okay, so first Vaishyas we'll see. Vaishyas, what do they do? Farming means growing food, cow protection, taking care of cows, business and trade. Okay, their role is to support society's economy, right, and food supply. And Shudras, they do labor and service. What is their duty? Their role is to assist and serve the other upper three classes through physical and physical work, right? They support the Shudras. Okay, so the Vaishyas, they produce and they manage resources, and Shudras, they help society run smoothly through their service and hard work. Okay, so 46. यतः प्रवृत्तिर्भूतानां येन सर्वम् इदं ततं स्वकर्मणा तम् अभ्यर्च्य सिद्धिं विन्दति मानवः. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, man can, in the performance of his own duty, attain perfection. So, here, see, God is the source of everyone and he's present everywhere. So, when a person he does his own duty, that is his job or role in life, and he offers that work to God, that work itself becomes worship. That's what we said, right? Whatever work we are doing. See, a Kshatriya's duty is to fight. So let him fight. That is his duty. That is his offering to Krishna. A Brahmana, what is his work? Preaching about Krishna. So that is his offering to Krishna. Now, Vaishya, he does cattle raising. That is his offering to Krishna. Shudra is what? He helps the other three upper classes. That is his offering to Krishna, right? So you don't have to change your profession. Okay, like for example, see, a teacher teaches, a farmer he does farming, a parent takes care of family, right? So if all this is done to please Krishna, then it leads to perfection. So what do we have to do? Do our duty sincerely and offer the results to Krishna. So that itself is the highest success in life. That's what they are saying. See, that's why in the PPT, in the picture, you see, for all the four ashramas, the center is Krishna. Whatever your duty, you do it, but do it as an offering to Krishna. Then your life is perfect. Okay. So next, 18.47. श्रेयान् स्वधर्मो विगुणः परधर्मात् स्वनुष्ठितात् स्वभावनियतं कर्म kurvam napnoti kilbisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Prescribed duties according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. So, here, what is Krishna telling? See, it is always better to do your own duty, even if you do it imperfectly, rather than to copy someone else's duty, even if you do it very well. So, see, each of us, each person has a natural role based on their nature and abilities, right? So, when you work according to your own nature and you offer that work to God, it does not create sin, right? But when you try to imitate another person's role, that can create confusion and problems. See, no work is bad if it is done to serve or please the Supreme Lord. So, what is Krishna telling here? Do what suits your nature and do that sincerely and do it as an offering to Krishna. Rather than doing someone other's occupation, even though you may do it perfectly, that creates confusion. Okay, so do what suits your nature and do it sincerely. Offer that to Krishna. Then you will that path is perfect. Krishna is saying, like for example, you see in the picture in the PPT, right? The judge is saying the first to climb the tree wins. Now, who? I mean, can an elephant climb a tree?
No,
Can no, right? And the fish in water, can it climb the tree?
no,
No. And the seal, can it climb? No.
no.
And the jackal, it can't. Only the monkey can do that, right? Monkey or the bird can do that. So That's what they're saying. So you must be doing your duty and do it to please Krishna, not someone else's duty. Though you may be perfect in that, right? So whatever is your nature, you do your job, even though you may not be perfect, but do that as an offering to Krishna. Whatever you know, but according to that nature, you do your job and do it as an offering to please Krishna. Okay, so that is what Krishna is saying here. 18.49, one can obtain the results of renunciation simply by self-control and by becoming unattached to material things and disregarding material enjoyments. That is the highest perfectional stage of renunciation. Now, a person who controls himself is not attached and gives up the desire to enjoy material pleasures can reach the highest stage of freedom from karma through real renunciation. So that is what they're saying in the translation, right? Okay, so what this really means, as we've already said many times also, real renunciation is not leaving work or family. See, it means thinking that I am part of God. So the results of my work belong to God, not to me. So whatever you do 100%. The duty that you're doing, you do it to your fullest. You give your full effort, but leave the results to God. I mean, do it as an offering to Krishna. Do it to please Krishna, right? So that intention is important. So here they're saying when someone works only to please Krishna, that person is a true renunciate, even without becoming a sannyasi. See, a grihastha can also be a true renunciate, right? That's what is our intention, right? He's a tyagi who does his work and offers it to Krishna. He is a true renunciant. It's not necessary that you have to become a sannyasi, give up everything, and go and preach. I mean, you give up family life and everything. Not necessary. You can do this. This is also good. Being a grihastha, you stay in family life, but you do whatever you do it as an offering to Krishna. Okay, you are a true renunciant. Okay, so a person in Krishna consciousness is already a real sannyasi. So such a person is satisfied within, not chasing material enjoyment. So he has no material desires. He's more self-satisfied because he does his duty to his fullest and leaves the results to Krishna. So what do we understand? Offering all work to Krishna frees us from reactions and brings us true peace. Okay, it is not binding us, it brings us peace. When you do anything to please Krishna or as an offering to Krishna, it frees us from reactions. So we have no good or bad karma, right? So it is liberating us. It does not bind us to this material world. Okay. So 54. Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhaktim labate param. One who is thus transcendently situated at once realizes the Supreme Brahman. He never laments nor desires to have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity. In that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So, when a person he becomes spiritually steady, okay, he realizes their true spiritual nature. Means he sees that in everybody, he doesn't see the outside body. He sees that everybody is a spirit soul. Their nature is same. They're eternal, right? They're Sachidananda, right? He knows that. So he gives respect, be it an enemy or a chandala or a dog or anybody. He gives respect to everybody equally, even be it to a dog, because he doesn't see the outward appearance, because he knows that the body is temporary. Only it stays as long as this material nature exists. But what is permanent is the spirit soul, which is eternal. So he sees everybody as a spirit soul, right? Because of this, he feels a deep happiness from inside. They don't feel sad over losses or they don't crave things. They see everyone equally, not higher or lower. Okay, so that's why they are not they are able to do pure devotion to Krishna. So actually, generally, what does material life mean? You have a lot of wants, fears, stress, you compare, right? This is material life. But what is spiritual life? Contentment. You're happy with what you have, you're peaceful, you have that equal vision, you see everybody, even your enemy. You see your enemy as a friend, right? You see everyone equally. So a devotee feels complete because they are connected to God, who is complete, right? God is complete. So that's why they feel complete, right? So for the devotees, liberation is not the final goal. Brahma Bhuta is not the final goal. What for them, what is the final goal? Anybody, what is the final goal for a devotee? For them, liberation is not the final goal. Anybody, what is the final goal of a devotee?
Service to Krishna.
Merging to
Merging with the Krishna.
Lord.
No, Mataji, no. It's Krishna Prema, Mataji, Krishna Prema. That is the highest thing. See, we devotees don't even look for liberation. We already discussed, right? There are 5 kinds of liberation that the devotees are not at all interested. For them, like liberation is far away. It stands with folded hands in front of them, begging them to take. But devotees are least interested. They are more interested in Krishna Prema, right? Love of Krishna. See, all of us now, we don't have love for Krishna, right? That's why we are doing sadhana bhakti to that love for Krishna is dormant in our heart now. To awaken that, that's why we do chanting, we do reading of the shastras, scriptures, everything, to awaken that dormant love for Krishna. So our main goal, and that's the speciality of the Hare Krishna mantra also. Well, many people ask, what is so special about the Hare Krishna mantra? Right? It gives Krishna Prema. It's not for liberation. There may be many mantras in this world which give liberation, but the Hare Krishna mantra, liberation is just a secondary, it's just a byproduct. But the main thing that it gives is Krishna Prema. Okay, that's what devotees want. Okay. And we devotees never look to merge in God. Please try to understand that. That is the first stage. Initially, when we are neophytes, the jnanis, they try to merge and become one with God. But that is not for devotees. Devotees, they always try to maintain their individuality. See, even before liberation, they are individual and they serve God by doing devotional service. And even after liberation, when they go back to Goloka, there also they maintain their individuality. There also they want to continue their devotional service to Krishna. They do, like the Jnanis, they don't want to merge into that impersonal Brahman and lose their individuality, right? So for devotees, that is like Sayuja Mukti. They're not at all. They're scared of that. They don't even want to go into that side. They don't want to merge and become one and lose their individuality. They get scared of that because they will not be able to do devotional service to Krishna, right? For them, it is like they want to do devotional service even after liberation, also, right? So 18.55. Bhaktya mam abhajanati yavan yaschasmi tattvataha tato mam tattvato gnatva vishate tat anantaram. One can understand the Supreme Personality as he is only by devotional service, and one is in full consciousness of the Supreme Lord. By such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. See, we can understand Krishna only through devotion, bhakti, not by intelligence. Don't think if you're intelligent and if you read a lot of books or imagination or speculation, you will be able to understand God. No. So when a person serves Krishna with love and full awareness under the guidance of a bona fide guru, right? Then Krishna reveals himself to that person. Such a devotee can enter into the spiritual world. Okay, so it's like this. Many people, as I was telling in the previous shloka, they think liberation, it does not mean losing individuality. Okay, the devotee always remains an individual. Even Krishna, he says in the second chapter, right? These kings and these soldiers, they were individuals in the past, they are individuals now, and they will be individuals in the future after they die also. So Krishna himself is saying that they maintain their individuality. So, what does it mean when they're saying they're entering God? See, it does not mean becoming one. When you're saying entering God, it does not mean they're becoming one with God. It means entering God's abode to live with Him and serve Him. See, it's like a bird, it's entering a green tree. It does not mean if it goes into a green bird, if it enters into a green tree, does it mean that it has become one with the tree? It maintains its individuality, right? It's still a bird in that green tree. A green bird and a green tree both are separate, right? Even though it may merge and for us from outside everything may appear green, it does not mean it has merged and become one with the tree. It still maintains its individuality. So a green bird is a green bird and a tree is green. So, like that, we also, after liberation, we maintain our individuality. We don't become one. So after liberation, bhakti does not stop. Okay, devotional service, it continues forever. Okay, you can see in the PPT, right, how everybody is serving Krishna here, right? Okay, 18.56. Sarva karmani api sada kurvano madhyapashrayah mat prasadat avapnoti shashvatam padam avyayam. Though engaged in all kinds of activities, my devotee under my protection reaches the eternal and imperishable abode by my grace. So, even while doing all kinds of daily activities, a pure devotee who takes full shelter of Krishna is protected by him. So, by Krishna's mercy, that devotee surely reaches the eternal spiritual abode. Okay, so here they're saying a pure devotee is always engaged in Krishna consciousness 24/7. Like you can see Prabhupada, right? He's so blissful with his devotees. He's so happy preaching Krishna consciousness. Okay, so the devotee may face difficulties, but Krishna personally takes care. Okay, the success is guaranteed. There's no doubt, there's no loss, right? And here they're talking about the spiritual about Krishna Loka. It is eternal. That Krishna Loka is a place where it is eternal, where there's no birth or death, and it is imperishable, right? Nothing is destroyed. Even when the pralaya happens in this material world, that spiritual planet, it stays as it is. It is not destroyed. And it is full of knowledge and bliss. It is Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means it is eternal. Chit means full of knowledge. Ananda means full of bliss. Okay, so nothing there is like it changes. In the material world, everything is prone to change, right? What is now something, it will change. Like if you buy a new phone, cell phone, it won't work the same way it was working a few months ago, right? So it changes. The what do you say, the way it works changes definitely. But in the spiritual world, it is not like that. It is, everything is the same, it is permanent. It never undergoes any change over there. Okay. See how happy and blissful all the devotees, the disciples, and everybody are looking here, right? Practicing Krishna consciousness. What more do we want? We are all craving for happiness, right? So this is real happiness here. Okay, 18.58. Mat chittah sarva durgani mat prasada tarishyasi atachetvam ahankaran nashosyasi vinangshyasi. If you become conscious of me, you will pass over all the obstacles of conditional life by my grace. If, however, you do not work in such consciousness, but act through false ego, not hearing me, you will be lost. So here Krishna is saying, if you stay conscious of Krishna and work for him, Krishna himself helps you cross all the problems of material life. Okay, this happens only by his mercy. It's not by our own strength. Please understand that. It's by the mercy of Krishna, not by our own strength. Do we overcome the problems of life? But if you ignore Krishna and act only because of ego, thinking that, oh, I know better, I am independent, I can do it, and don't listen to the guidance of Krishna, then you get stuck and lost in material life. Right? Because you're doing it for your own sense gratification. You're not doing it to please Krishna. So if you do it for your own sense gratification, there is karma. So to enjoy or suffer that karma, you have to come back. So you'll be caught up in this material world. But if you do your duties to please Krishna, there is no karma. It is akarma. So you can go back to Krishna Loka. Okay. 18.61. Ishwarah sarva bhutanam hriddeshe arjuna tishtati brahmayan sarva bhutani yantra rudhani mayaya. The Supreme Lord is situated in everyone's heart, O Arjuna, and is directing the wanderings of all living entities who are seated as on a machine made of the material energy. So, Krishna is telling, O Arjuna, the Supreme Lord, Paramatma, lives in the heart of every living being. Okay, he's there as Super Soul Paramatma in the heart of every living being. He guides and directs everyone's journey through life. Right, so each living being is a cat is I mean, like, the soul is there, cat in every body, right? He's sitting just like in a machine. This body is like a machine, right? The soul is sitting in that machine. Okay, so what Prabhupada is trying to say in the purport is, we are not fully independent. See, even though we make choices, Krishna in the heart is the final controller. Right? The soul changes body, but Paramatma never forgets our past, present, and future. See, how is it that we remember? We try to do our activities. See, in the previous birth, we stopped somewhere with some desires, and because of those desires, we got this body. And how did we know that we had to start our life like this? It is because Krishna as Paramatma gave us the remembrance. Oh, you wanted to do this in your previous Janma, but you could not complete it. Now you complete. So Krishna as Paramatma, he gives us that remembrance, because of which, because he is Paramatma, right? He knows everything. He knows our past, present, future, everything. So because we took a new body, we forget everything of the past. But Krishna is not like that, right? He's transcendental. He knows about himself. He knows about us also. So he knows what we wanted to do in our previous Janma. And that's why when we take this new body, he gives us that remembrance. Oh, in your past birth, you wanted to do this, but you could not complete it. Now you start. Because you could not complete it then, you start now. He gives us that remembrance. And then he continues our journey. Okay. Right. So next we go to 62. Tam eva sharanam gaccha sarva bhavena bharata tat prasadat param shantim sthanam prapsyasi shashvatam. Ocean of Bharata, surrender unto him utterly. By his grace, you will attain transcendental peace and the supreme and the eternal abode. So here, what are they saying? Do your duty according to your nature without attachment to results and offer everything to Krishna. See, earlier also we said, right, true renunciation is not giving up work, but giving up your ego, right? And your fruits of work. You give your results to Krishna, right? So by bhakti alone, one truly knows Krishna. right? And when we do Krishna consciousness alone, do we become joyful and we become equal to all? We cross material bondage, and finally we go back to Krishna Loka. So here in the picture, right, we can see the king of Puri. He is grooming. He is working for Krishna. He is cleaning the way to Krishna. Imagine the king doing that service of cleaning the road with a broom, right? So now also we see that every year when Jagannath's they celebrate that Rath Yatra, right? The king they give a broom and he sweeps the floor before the Rath, right? It's become a tradition. 18.63 इति ते ज्ञानम् आख्यातं गुह्याद् गुह्यतरं मया विमृश्यैतद् अशेषेण यतेच्छसि तथा कुरु. Thus I have explained to you the most confidential of all knowledge. Deliberate on this fully, and do what you wish to do. So now Krishna, he has revealed the most confidential knowledge. What is that? Brahman, Super Soul, and Bhagavan.
Paramatma. Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan.
Yes, perfect, Prabhuji. Thank you. Yeah. So he's telling, so he gives guidance, but respects our free will. So we can, we can see it's not necessary that some may be interested in Brahman, some may be interested in Super Soul, some may be interested in Bhagwan. So Krishna is telling, like, this is Bhagavan is the highest, but I'm not forcing everyone to come to that stage. He gives that independence. So you think carefully and where you want to fit in, right? So he gives guidance, but he respects our free will. Okay, so it's up to us whether we want to merge and become one with God through the Brahman, or worship him as Super Soul in the heart, or as Bhagavan, where we want to establish a relationship with Krishna and do personal service to him. So it's all up to us. He's not forcing us that, oh, this bhakti is the highest, you do this only. But he's telling that bhakti is the highest, but he's not forcing us. He's giving us that independence. He's giving us that free will. Now it's up to you. You decide. Okay, he's giving us that choice. Okay. But he's saying at the same time, doing bhakti yoga, that is the highest, wherein you develop a relationship with Krishna, either as a master or a lover or or a master or a enchanta, dasya, sakhya. We have many relationships, right? Like that. So Krishna prefers that, but he never forces us. He says, okay, it's up to you. If you want to merge into me, okay, impersonal Brahman. You want to meditate as Paramatma in the heart, okay, fine. It's up to you. But he says Bhagavan is the highest, okay? That is the best, through bhakti. So 18.73 will come back later. I think there is, after 6.5 is here. Then we'll come back to 7.3 later. So 6.5. This is a very important shloka. Manmana bhava madbhakto madhyaji mam namaskuru mame vaishyasi satyam te pratijani priyosime. Always think of me. And always, this is what we should be doing actually. That's what Krishna is saying. Always think of me and become my devotee, worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. So now Krishna, he gives the most confidential instruction. Always remember him, become his devotee, worship him and offer everything to him. So we should shape our life so that every action connects to Krishna all day and night. Right? One who constantly thinks of Krishna with love will surely attain him. Okay, this is Krishna's personal promise to his dear devotee. See, always think of Krishna through chanting or through reading or by hearing or doing some seva. like prasadam distribution, do something for Krishna, right? Or worship him. Like morning we do the Mangalarti, right? Do puja, we dress the deities, we make garlands for the deities, we make ornaments for the deities, right? And offer your homage unto me. Homage means what? You do dandavat to the Lord. See, if you are full of ego, you think that you're someone, so and so, so and so, so and so, you don't tend to bend before someone, right? Only if you are humble do you bend before somebody. So that's why Krishna is saying, offer your homage unto me. See, only if you're humble do you bend in front of somebody, right? That's why Krishna is saying, offer your homage unto me. If you do all these four, definitely you will come to me without fail. And this is Krishna's promise. I promise you this, he's telling Arjuna, because you are my very dear friend. Okay? And this is the famous shloka I think everybody knows. Sarvadharman parityajya mamekam sharanam vraja aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami ma suchaha. So abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reaction. Do not fear. See, finally Krishna says, he says, follow this, that, and everything. But now, finally, what is the final instruction that Krishna gives? Give up all complicated religious rules, rituals, and methods, and simply surrender to me with faith and love. Don't worry or fear. Okay, he's saying by surrendering, he personally protects you from all sinful reactions. Okay, so what true perfection is? Pure devotion to Krishna, being attracted to his all attractive personal form, right? Getting attracted to his form as Krishna. That is the highest, right? Some people they say Rama or Narsimha or whatever, right? Vishnu. But Krishna is saying the highest perfection is when you worship him as Krishna in his two-handed form. Getting attracted to his all attractive personal form is the highest. Even though maybe other are incarnations and they have the same strength as Krishna, but Krishna is saying this all attractive personal form is everything. If you can focus on it, that is the highest. Okay, so everything else, like whatever rituals you do, meditation you do, philosophy, that is secondary, Krishna is telling. So surrender alone is enough to attain liberation. That is what Krishna is saying. And he's saying, if you surrender to me, I will deliver you. Whatever mountains and mountains of sins you have accumulated in all your crores of janmas, that will go for sure. Do not fear, Krishna is telling. So he's giving us that, what do you say? That confidence he's giving us, like you don't fear. You just surrender unto me. I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions. Okay. So 18.67. Idam te nata pastaya na bhaktaya kadachana na cha ashushrusave vachyam na cha mam yo abhya suyati. Purport, sorry, translation. This confidential knowledge may not be explained to those who are not austere or devoted or engaged in devotional service, not to one who is envious of me. So here, Krishna is trying to say who this knowledge cannot be explained to, or who will not understand it. Okay, so Krishna's most confidential knowledge is not for the careless or the envious people. Only for those who are austere, devoted, and sincerely engaged in Krishna consciousness can truly understand him. Those who are proud or jealous of Krishna, they cannot grasp this knowledge. Okay, so and if you try to interpret it without devotion, it leads to misunderstanding. So true understanding comes only under the guidance of a pure devotee. Right? This we have to understand. That is how pure Krishna consciousness is. A person who's jealous cannot understand about Krishna. You have to be like very a devotee, right, to understand Krishna, right? So 18.68. Ya idam paramam guhyam mad bhakteshu abhidhasyati. I think this is being covered. Param kritva asham shayaha. So for one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed. At the end, he will come back to me. So explaining here, they are saying one who explains the supreme secret to the devotees, devotional. Okay. So here they're talking about explaining Bhagavad Gita properly to devotees guarantees the person who is explaining the Bhagavad Gita he will progress in pure devotional service. By sincerely teaching Krishna's supreme truth, he is assured of returning to the spiritual home back to Krishna. Right here, they're saying one who explains this Bhagavad Gita to the devotees, devotional service is guaranteed, and he will surely come back to me. That's what Krishna is saying. So those who are giving this Bhagavad Gita as it is, that knowledge to other devotees, and the person who is giving it in the purport, they are saying, Prabhupada is saying that, and even Krishna is saying that, because they are giving that message of Krishna to the devotees, they are sure to come back to me. That's what Krishna is saying. They're guaranteed to come back to me. Okay? Because a person who's trying to give the Bhagavad Gita to the devotees, he has no intention, no sense gratification, or no benefit. He does not get anything, right? He's doing it just to please Krishna, right? So that's why Krishna is saying that he is guaranteed to come back to me. Okay. So 18.69. This is Nacha tasman manusheshu kaschin me priyakrittamaha bhavita nacha me tasmad anyaha priyataro bhuvi. There is no servant in this world more dear to me than he, nor will there be ever be one more dear. Okay, so here Krishna is saying the person who spreads this Bhagavad Gita as it is and helps other to come to Krishna is the most dear servant of the Lord. So no one is more loved by Krishna than the one who shares his message and awakens devotion in others. Okay, Krishna likes that devotee so much. The one who spreads his words, right, in the Bhagavad Gita to other devotees is very, very dear to Krishna. Okay. Now 18.70. Adeshyate cha ya imam dharmyam samvadam avayoh jnana yagnena tenaham ishtahasyam iti me matihi. And I declare that he who studies the sacred conversation worships me by his intelligence. So here Krishna is saying, simply by studying and understanding the Bhagavad Gita, a person worships Krishna with intelligence. See, it means that knowledge of his words itself is an act of devotion. See, when you try to understand the Bhagavad Gita, you read the Bhagavad Gita, understand it, and you try to imbibe the words that are told by Krishna, that itself is an act of devotional service. Okay, so that's what Krishna is saying. And I declare that he who studies this sacred conversation worships me, right? Worships me means they do devotional service. When you're reading that or you understand and you imbibe and you try to implement it, right? It's like you're worshipping Krishna. You're doing devotional service to Krishna. That is real intelligence, Krishna is telling. Okay. 18.71. Shraddhavan anasuyascha shrunuyad api yo naraha sopi muktaha shubhallokan prapnuyad punya karmanam. And one who listens with faith and without envy becomes free from sinful reaction and attains to the planets where the pious dwell. Okay, so simply hearing the Bhagavad Gita with faith faith and without envy cleanses one of sinful reactions, right? Even if a person is not yet a pure devotee, hearing from a genuine devotee gives the fruits of righteous activity and can lead them to a auspice. See, just by listening to the Bhagavad Gita, even if he is a neophyte devotee, he gets the result of that pious activity of doing a sacrifice, after which, when he dies, he goes to the heavenly planets. Okay, see, even a neophyte devotee gets the benefit of going to the heavenly planets, right? And lead them to the auspicious planets of the pious. So the devotee, by sharing Krishna's message, helps everyone take a step forward to liberation, right? Somehow or the other, if we just take Krishna's message, we are moving a step forward towards liberation. Okay, just, I mean, like a small act towards Krishna. If you just take one step towards Krishna, Krishna takes 10 steps towards you. But the main thing is, Krishna sees that whether you're taking that first step or not. He's waiting for you to take that first step, right? If you take the first step, Krishna is more eager than you. He wants to take us back to him, right? 18.747576. Okay. Sanjaya said, "Thus I've heard the conversation of the two great souls, Krishna and Arjuna, and so wonderful is that message that my hair is standing on end." Okay, so now, okay, Sanjaya, after hearing the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, all this he was seeing through the divine vision given by Vyasadeva, right? You all must be knowing that. Sanjaya is actually watching all this sitting in Hastinapur in the kingdom with Dhritarashtra, right? In Kurukshetra, what is happening? He's having that divine vision which is given by Vyasadeva. So he's seeing all this divine conversation, hearing all this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. He was like overwhelmed with wonder, and his hairs on his hand and everywhere was standing. He was so much overwhelmed with wonder, listening to all the instructions that Krishna gave Arjuna. They were so powerful and extraordinary. On all their conversation was very. He was like it was very extraordinary, right? And that's why his hair stood on one end. So, what does this show? This shows that wherever Krishna and his devotee act together, victory and spiritual perfection are certain. Right? Wherever Krishna and Arjuna are there and his devotee act together, victory and spiritual perfection are certain. So, by following Arjuna's example and understanding Krishna, our lives too can become successful and blissful. Okay, by the mercy of Vyasa, I've heard these most confidential talks directly from the master of all mysticism, Krishna, who was speaking personally to Arjuna. O King, as I repeatedly recall this wondrous and holy dialogue between Krishna and Arjuna, I take pleasure being thrilled at every moment. So Sanjaya, he heard all the confidential talks of Krishna to Arjuna, and he's thanking them, his Guru Maharaj Vyasa Maharshi, that I mean, here we can see the importance of disciplic succession. See, we understood Krishna not by speculation, but through a bona fide spiritual masters. See, we see Gnanis, they go into the forest and they think they are intelligent and they read by themselves the Vedas and the Upanishads, right? They want to understand everything. That is why they speculate. But here, the Bhaktas, they don't try to understand by themselves. They read the Shastras under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master. Okay, they don't use their intelligence here. Whatever the acharyas are passing on, they take it from them. Okay, it comes through parampara and not through speculation. Okay, so when you take it like that, it purifies the senses and enables us to hear about the supreme instructions directly. Okay, So that's here what they're trying to say is true understanding of Bhagavad Gita comes only through proper guidance, right? That, and who is that? Who gives us a proper guidance? It's the spiritual master. Okay. Okay, 18.76. O King, when I remember the wonderful form of Lord Krishna, I am struck with even greater wonder and I rejoice again and again. So Sanjaya is telling Dhritarashtra what he is recollecting the dialogues of Krishna and Arjuna. He's remembering that conversation again and again. And he's saying, Dhritarashtra, that that conversation is filling him with joy and excitement every moment. So, hearing Bhagavad Gita, when you hear Bhagavad Gita from the right source, it gives transcendental understanding. It purifies the heart and it gradually establishes full Krishna consciousness, making life constantly joyful and spiritually uplifting. Okay, so when you hear it from the correct person, that the effect of the Bhagavad Gita is it spiritually uplifts us, right? It gives us that joy, that spiritual happiness it gives us. Okay. 18.78. Yatra yo. I'm sorry. I think I just missed. I've come to 18.78. I forgot one shloka, right? I'll take that. That's the main important shloka, 18.73. After this, I will take that. 18.78. Yatra Yogeshwara Krishno, Yatra Partho Dhanurdharaha, Tatra Shir Vijayo Bhutir, Dhruva Nitir Matir Mama. Very important shloka. Wherever there's Krishna, the master of all mystics, and wherever there's Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. That is my opinion. So, what is Sanjaya finally concluding and telling Dhritarashtra? That wherever Krishna, the master of all mystics, right, and Arjuna, the supreme archer, is there, there is victory, opulence, power, and morality. So, the Bhagavad Gita is not merely a battlefield conversation, it is the supreme instruction of morality, religion, and knowledge. Okay. So it is its essence is surrender to Krishna in full devotional service. Okay, that is Krishna. You practice Krishna consciousness, which is the highest perfection of life. Okay, so the Gita explains the supreme personality of Godhead, Krishna, the living entities, material nature, eternal time, and all activities. Everything depends on Krishna. See, nothing in this world is independent of Krishna. Be it the material world or the spiritual world, everything is dependent on Krishna. See, while all creation it appears separate, but it is simultaneous. I mean, like though it appears that the spiritual world is separate, material world is separate, but everything is dependent on Krishna. Okay. So what do we understand finally? That where Krishna and his devotees are present, there is all goodness. Here in the shloka, they're trying to say that. Okay, the Gita teaches surrender to Krishna as the ultimate path to victory, morality, and other and eternal and spiritual life. Okay, so with I'll just try to complete. I forgot that 73 shloka, right? Somewhere it is. Yeah, here it is. So this is an important shloka which we should not miss actually, because this is the turning point actually. Arjuna uvacha nashto moha smritir labdha tvat prasadan maya achyuta stito asmi gata sandeha karishye vachanam tava. See, after telling the whole of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna, he gives him the freedom. See, now I've given you the whole of the Bhagavad Gita. Now it is your this thing. I give you full independence. I give you full independence. Now it is up to you if you want to fight or not. I will not force you. Okay, now Arjuna, after listening to everything, what does he say? Arjuna said, "My dear Krishna, O infallible one, my illusion is now gone. I have regained my memory by your mercy and am now firm and free from doubt and prepared to act according to your instructions." Okay, so this is a very important shloka actually. This is a turning point where Arjuna says, "Now my illusion is gone." Okay, and he now remembers his constitutional position as the eternal servant of the Supreme Lord. Now he's freed from doubt by Krishna's mercy. Now he's ready to act according to Krishna's instructions. Okay, so this verse teaches us that true knowledge is understanding our role as servitors of Krishna, not as masters of the material world. We all think that we are the enjoyers, we're the masters of the material world. But no, what is our swabhava? Our swabhava is Jivera Swarupa Hoy, Krishnera Nityadas. We are eternal servants of Krishna. We were created by Krishna to serve Krishna, to please Krishna. We can never be masters. We are the eternal servitors of Krishna. Right? So, in illusion or moha, we think that we are independent and we are in control. But liberation comes when we recognize Krishna as the supreme. That's the only way we can get liberated from this miserable, painful material world. There's no other way, no other way, no other way. Only by practicing devotional service can we get out of this material world. Otherwise, we are under the control of Prakriti through the ropes of through these three ropes of modes of material nature: mode of goodness, passion, ignorance. They keep us tied, and we are like puppets in their hands. The only way to get released from these three modes is practicing Krishna consciousness. There's no way out. No way out. Okay. So now finally Arjuna surrenders and he says that I am free from all doubt and I will act like what you have said and I'm ready to fight. O Krishna, he says. Right? So this is the thing. So his main intention is, though Arjuna, he was not interested to fight, but to please Krishna, he fought. He had no desire, like he did not want to fight. He had no sense gratification. Oh, I want to kill everybody and I want to get the kingdom and I want to enjoy everything. He had no such desires. The only reason he fought is he wanted to please Krishna. So that is what we should do. Whether we like or hate our duty, that is not important. What is work in the mode of goodness, we should do it as a matter of duty. Whether we like it or not is immaterial. So whatever Krishna likes, that is what we like, right? We do what pleases Krishna. So that is important, okay? So that's what Arjuna did. Though he really didn't like to fight, but to please Krishna, he fought the war. Okay, so that is important for us. Okay. So with this, we complete. So please kindly let me know if you have any doubts.